Ooh.
Hi, Linda.
Well, with that, maybe we should get started on our little preamble. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jordan Rosin. No pronouns are they and he, and I'm calling from the Duwamish lands in Seattle, Washington. Heidi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Heidi Winters Vogel, and I am calling from the Miami and Kickapoo lands of Western Indiana. And I welcome you all. It's so wonderful to see familiar faces and to meet new people. And I'm excited about this project that Jordan and I have been working on for quite a while. And many of you have contributed to it, recognizing faces. And you will recognize people's faces both as storytellers and as playbackers in this resource. Thank you.
That's right. We are here today to kick off the launch of what we're calling Storytelling on Screen, an online playback theater archive and guidebook. As Heidi mentioned, she and I have been working on this for about the last year. It's involved a lot of event coordination and research and understanding about Creative Commons licenses. And we've had great support throughout this process from Anita Waltz at University Libraries at Virginia Tech. And so what else to say? This is produced by the School of Performing Arts at Virginia Tech in association with Virginia Tech Publishing. Natasha Staley is the chair of the theater and cinema department there and was a great support of this project. We had many other partners there at Virginia Tech who helped see this through. And I personally want to thank my first playback theater teacher, Saida Trujillo, to whom I've dedicated this work. Heidi, you have some additional thanks?
Yes, I also want to thank Sammy LeBron, who was an intern from Wabash College, where I'm on the faculty. He did a lot of the editing and grunt work on it this summer. Appreciate him. And also was dedicated to my original playback group, Inside Out Playback Theater, who is well represented here in the room. And my co-founder, Roger Foster, who is no longer with us, but greatly loved and appreciated. Also, I'd like to thank World Playback Theater, the Ume Group, and Pangea Playback, three groups whose recordings we have in this project and allowed their work and the storytellers who also agreed to appear to be a resource for all of us as we teach playback.
Great, thank you, Heidi. So I'll say once again that this meeting is being recorded. We're gonna, in a little bit, demonstrate how to navigate the archive and the guidebook. And so we'll publish this on YouTube along with the other resources so that people can see what it's like. If you prefer not to be on camera, you're more than welcome to turn yours off. I do ask that we remain muted until the Q&A session, at which point you're welcome to ask questions either in the chat or out loud. Yeah, great. And I've received our official funding language. Thank you, Anita, because all of this deserves kudos and thanks. The work was made possible in part by a commission from the Virginia Tech History Council and funding from the University Libraries at Virginia Tech's Open Education Initiative Faculty Grant Program, Virginia Tech Publishing, and Wabash College's Theater Department Summer Internship Program. So big gratitude to those specific people, organizations, and pots of money. So with that, why don't we move into just discussing a little of the context here. I'll say that Heidi and I somehow came across this idea of creating an archive when we were both teaching playback and other theater forms online last year. And we noticed that where there exists in YouTube a variety of reels or highlights or clips of playback theater performances, there weren't a whole lot of full-length playback theater events recorded and publicly available. And if you do playback, you probably know that the arc of an event is very important. The role of the conductor is very integrally related to that arc. And that also everything we do is rooted in the words and essence of the storyteller. And sometimes for privacy reasons, we don't include the storyteller's words when we're sharing about or offering recordings of playback theater. And so we were interested to see what might be possible if we were able to get the appropriate permission and consent to have a literally full-length recording of several playback theater events. So a few of the advantages that this offers include being able to talk about and study the narrative reticulation, the flow from story to story, and to get multiple kind of opinions on that. Also, for me, who's still teaching theater and playback in a very tumultuous time, now in person, but with students quarantining every other day and missing class here and missing class there, I've found just this week actually that having these stories and as well as the enactments is another resource. So if we're learning a playback theater form, I might ask a student as a makeup assignment to go and listen to someone's story and create their own video in response to it of themselves doing a playback theater form. Obviously, this doesn't have some of the kind of check-in and live aspect that we hope for in an actual playback theater event. But as far as learning in kind of crazy times is concerned, I've found it to be a pretty good and interesting resource or advantage. Heidi, do you want to speak about your uses and inspirations?
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. I wanted to point out that the foreword is by Joe Salas, who does a wonderful introduction in that foreword to playback theater and to the experience during COVID in moving some playback online, and how it is a challenging and really different than live playback. But wanted to emphasize that online playback is a real thing now. We've developed different forms. Those of you that do online playback recognize that it is a supplement for in-person playback. It will never replace it. But as I teach playback without access to an experienced playback group near me where I can take my students to witness a show, this resource is very useful. And I'm really excited to expand how playback can be taught without having to physically be in the room for groups of people that don't have access to that due to economics, distance, for whatever reason. It doesn't replace online playback, but is a good supplement for that. Thank you. Back to you, Jordan.
Great. So one of the other key features of this project that was a learning experience for both Heidi and I, but pretty essential to that, those goals of making something public and making it a full-length recording, was understanding the Creative Commons process and legal terms. It was a condition of the grant that we received from the university libraries that we make whatever resource we were creating open access, which in terms of the Creative Commons licensing generally means that it's under the by attribution, non-commercial, share alike license. And this is one of the most I don't know if the expression is most restrictive or least restrictive. It's the most public possible iterations of this license, which means that any of the content that's in either the archive of videos or the guidebook itself, people can extract, they can download, they can share as long as they attribute the original sources. And don't use it for commercial purposes, and also use the same license when they're sharing that material. So it is primed for second editions, for mix and matching, for adaptation of all kinds as an artifact under this Creative Commons license. We should note that all the storytelling, the stories themselves, belong to the storytellers, but have been, through our permission forms, licensed under this project, under the Creative Commons license. Maybe we'll stop here for just a moment, since I know Anita is in the house. Would you, if you're willing, pop on to correct me or add anything you might want to say about Creative Commons or this sort of licensing?
Sure.
Anita Waltz, our wonderful editor.
Hi, thanks for inviting me today. So Creative Commons is a way to move what would be a default copyright status. So essentially, you can't use without permission or without a copyright exemption or without some kind of license. It's a way to move works from that status into another status that says you can use parts of this, you could modify it, you could adapt it, you could customize it to meet a specific and different goal that is non-commercial and that still retains the same license as the work. So I think your description was very good. I have put I'm putting a couple links in the chat related to the specific license. There are two versions. There is what is called the human readable, and then there is the official legal terminology. So I'll clearly indicate which is what.
Thank you so much, Anita, for this contribution, but then also for your support throughout this entire project. It's been really exciting.
Thank you.
Heidi, over to you.
Yes, as Anita said, and as Jordan said, this allows this resource to be open for addition, for changes. And I've already heard from Debbie Eden, who's in the room, offering one of a performance as a resource to add to this. And I'm inviting playbackers and anyone else that sees this, that has suggestions, has additions, would like to link a performance that they have to the resource. We'd love to include that so that it's constantly growing and being enriched and made more valuable. What, if you're teaching playback, what would be useful for you? If you're not familiar with playback, is there something that's missing in this resource that we can add to make it more useful, more helpful in just explaining what playback is and more accessible? I've put the link in the chat so that you can go to it if you so choose. And Anita has also put in other resources about the Creative Commons and etc. in the chat as well. The resource is available and you can access it and start using it at any time. To you, Jordan.
Okay.
Unless I missed it.
Nope, that's great. At this point, I'm going to start in with the demonstration here. So please give me some kind of a thumbs up if you can see what I'm showing here on my screen. Yeah, okay, great. So one thing to note is that all of the guidebook and the archive are housed in VTech Works, which is Virginia Tech's open access institutional repository. It's created with an eye towards preservation and longevity. And while some of these materials are also out on YouTube, this creates a kind of a nice redundancy that is with preservation in mind. If you were to just try and find it on your own, we don't yet, I think, pop very high in Google, but if you come to vtechworks.lib.bt.edu, and if you were to search for Playback Archive over on the right-hand side, this is assuming you didn't have one of those direct links that Heidi's already shared with you. You could find it on your own. Playback Archive, and it should be the first hit here, Storytelling on Screen, an online playback theater archive and guidebook. that link that Heidi put in the chat, I think, is a permalink, so it shouldn't change. There's another version of it here, this, and that is shareable and will remain the sort of permanent address of this resource. So that's how to navigate to this. Again, I've said VTech Works is the institutional repository. Let's get into the contents itself. So here, downloadable is the PDF version of the guidebook. It's 55 pages, and it contains within it all the links to the materials which we're calling the archive. There's also a way to go to the individual performances here on the homepage via the links. But I think the guidebook is where the money's at, as much money as there can be in a non-commercially licensed Creative Commons artifact. So opening up the PDF guidebook, you'll see our beautiful cover here. The cover art is by, let's see, Paul Hasemeyer, with cover design by Kindred Gray. And we'll take you now to the table of contents. Many, if not all, the links in the PDF are clickable. So if you wanted to go back to that version on VTech Works, you could click it here. When you get to the contents, table of contents page, all of these are clickable and allows you to go direct to whatever it is you're interested in. As Heidi mentioned, we've got this lovely foreword by Joe Salas and some introduction to the project, which in part Heidi and I have covered today. What you might find most interesting then are the outlines of the performances in the archive. So if I go ahead and click on performance number 1, World Playback Theater, New Beginnings, here you see a little bit of context, some production credits, the duration of the show, a list of the forms used in that performance, and each of these are hyperlinks to the corresponding description here in the guidebook of that form. And then if you continue, you find an outline of the entire performance. It includes these time code hyperlinks, which will take you to the exact time in the performance on YouTube, where you could see this form in action. And then again here with the word guidebook, you could go to learn about sociometry, to learn about pairs, to learn about fluid sculpture here in the PDF itself. So that's the if, for example, we wanted to go learn about perspectives, staying here in the guidebook, we could click this link and it would take us to the whole section on forms. And here we give a little description of perspectives. We suggest some further reading and try to give attribution where possible. And we have, again, all instances of the perspectives form in the 3 main performances which constitute the archive at this point. So people can click here or here to go again direct to that place in the YouTube video where the form is evidenced. One point of interest or caveat is that you won't be directed immediately to the point where the enactment begins, but to the point where the conductor invites the next story or in some other way segues, so that again we can hear the storyteller of that story, of that enactment, and so that we also get a glimpse into what the kind of conducting was like that might have provoked one story or another. So if we go back, forgive my fast scrolling here, to the section on outlines of the individual performances, I'll show you now what it looks like to go out to YouTube and watch one of these. We were lucky to have Hannah Fox's company, Pangea Playback Theater, offer a performance as part of this archive. And that's the one that we'll take a look at just here for a moment to get a little sense of what this might be like. We'll go to, did I say Linda's story? Lisa's story, yeah, 3-part here. So again, I'm clicking on the timecode link and here's where it takes us. So as you may have remembered me saying, all the videos are hosted both on YouTube and in that more permanent, but not as necessarily navigation friendly place VTech works. And for fun, let's go ahead. This is just about 6 minutes. We'll watch what there is, if my computer will load it.
Everybody come on back.
Give me a thumbs up if you can hear.
Keep us posted, Elsa. Yep, thank you, thank you. So we have time for a couple more stories. Getting warmed up here. Who might have the next story? Again, we create a dialogue through stories. So one story responds to the next story, and all stories are legitimate, are valuable, are meaningful. Sometimes we wait a moment. Oh, various hands, various hands. Okay, Lisa, go for it. This is your first playback experience. So
Yeah, wow. Well, my story is based upon our little breakout experience with another Lisa in Germany.
okay.
And we spoke about, are we ready to hug?
Yes.
And today I went hiking. I did the rock scramble at Mohonk, which is a vertical rock climbing experience. I do it regularly with a friend. And in this case, we were coming down, and as we were descending, two couples were ascending, and the two women were having a massive anxiety attack and did not want to proceed. So my friend and I said, no problem, we'll take you down. And one of us took the front, one took the back, and we assured these women who didn't know us from Adam that they would be safe and we'll escort them down, they'll be fine. And when we got down, they threw their arms around us as if COVID did not exist. I was telling Lisa the story.
Ah, okay. So a recent experience of positive human connection, helping some people with anxiety, helping them back down this cliff.
Yes.
And it ends with a big hug.
An unexpected, unsolicited,
yummy,
unsafe, yummy hug.
Yeah, just not without hesitation.
Correct.
All right, we will see this as a 3-part story. We'll see Joyce Ricardo. Let's watch.
Can someone show me how to use this thing? I've been here for a while, and I knew I should have Googled this or something. I mean, it's getting dark, and these rocks are a challenge, and I don't know what to do or where to go. Which way? Which way? Can you help me?
I'm the hiking trail, and I haven't seen a whole lot of people, but it's nice to see people coming back and walking freely, supporting each other, enjoying the greenery, enjoying the day. I've been having a sense of expansion and watching these humans also expand. I know that they've needed me, and they've needed a sense of touch. They've needed a sense of touch, not just with me, but with each other.
Come on. Come on. Yep, it's this way, this way, this way. Just follow me. Just here we go. Here we go, and here we go, and here we go, and here we are. We made it back. And there you are. And there I am. And what's happening? What's happening?
Do
What
it.
are you?
Do
What
it.
are you? What are you doing?
Don't
Is
hold
this
back.
happening?
Do
Is this
it.
happening? Is this? This is.
Thank you, performers. Thank you, Lisa. Hug story, helping story, human story. Thank you. All right, so we have, yeah, I mean, you know.
Great. So I'll pause it there and just also point out, if you are overwhelmed by anything we've shown so far and preferred YouTube for everything, YouTube has some great features, like, for example, this whole chapter outline, which if clicked is identical to what we've seen in the guidebook, but will just take you to the corresponding part of the YouTube video itself. These are also all organized as part of a playlist, which I'm not sure if you can see directly here, but if you go to the homepage of the YouTube channel, which is Storytelling on Screen, your channel, there is here the playlists, and we have Storytelling on Screen, an online playback theater archive, which has all three of the main performances that we have so far. World Playback
The idea
Theater's
of
New Beginnings, the Ume Group's Voices in the Stone, and Pangea Playback Theater's What Now? The last thing I'll show is in VTech Works itself, how you might go to the downloadable versions of all of these video files. So from the homepage here on VTech Works, you can find the full recording and transcript for any of these in their own individual VTech Works entries. We couldn't get them all kind of nested, but they are correlated with various kinds of metadata. The VTech Works platform also has a web player, so you could watch in VTech Works itself, or you could download the MP4 version of the file. We also have full captions and transcripts available for accessibility for all of these performances. Trying to think if there's anything else to say about that. Probably not. At this point, I'll take you to the appendix, where in the guidebook we talk about additions. Let's find it here. Opening again the PDF. Forgive the fast scrolling as I come to our table of contents. Something I didn't mention, but we did scroll past, besides the description of forms, there's also some writing that Heidi and I have done, drawing on many other existing written sources about main concepts in playback theater and the different roles of the audience, conductor, actor, and musicians. So especially for folks who are brand new to playback, that could be some pretty interesting explanation. For those who are more advanced in their practice, there might be citation here of some interesting resources you might want to explore further. When we come to the appendixes, we can hear about adding to the archive. As Heidi mentioned, part of our intention is for it to be a somewhat living thing, to flush out further But as you heard from me at the beginning, the process that Heidi and I had to go through to make all of this was quite intense. And we want to uphold this standard of these recordings being full, unedited, or minimally edited recordings of performances for which all the artists and the visible or participating audience members have clearly given their consent for their likeness to be distributed under this Creative Commons license. As a reference, we include a copy of the text, which we got approved by the Virginia Tech legal department for us to be able to gather that consent from the audience. And so it says that the event is recorded and that the entirety of their likeness may be recorded and released under the terms of this license, gives the link to learn more. And there's a little hold harmless, et cetera, et cetera. And I put a note here that we use different versions of this text in Zoom, Eventbrite, and Google Forms to create a kind of clickable or accessible version of giving that consent. So it's not a perfect or at all easy process, but it's what we could manage for the 3 different events which we were involved in. And so we are happy to hear of others who want to share their work, but just know that that is a difficult kind of process. There's one other kind of bonus full-length recording here of another show by my company, the Ume Group. We were just wanting to make sure we had enough, so we included it here as a sort of supplement so that we could keep focus on the diversity of companies represented by World Playback Theatre, Pangea, and the Ume Group. But this is also an available resource and has a good variety of forms that someone could click through. Last thing I'll show is the interest and adoption form, and Heidi can talk us through that.
Absolutely. If you are interested in using this resource or would like to give us feedback on it or connect with others who are using this form, this is a way to join, to get your information out there, to share ideas or feedback that you have, and if we enough people are interested, can start a listserv where we can keep in contact and people can share more directly with each other. So this is both for our use in being aware of who is checking this out and who is interested in it, but also to create connections between those of you that found it helpful and getting us feedback.
And I'll try if I can now to put the link to that in the chat if it's not already, so that folks can, yeah, again, let us know what you like, what you don't like, how you're using it. So that takes us, I think, to the Q&A time. I might start by looking at the chat here.
I don't see any particular questions. I did get an email from Debbie before the event started, asking about contributing to this, and Debbie, yes. I didn't respond to your email, but hopefully you got the answer about we'd love to have resources added to this, and we can talk further on the side about how to make that happen. Thank you, all of you. Hi, Debbie. Thank you for your feedback and questions. What are you wondering if it's in there, Lenore?
I want to say that I didn't know what to expect. I thought it's some kind of storytelling, and I'm overwhelmed, and I think it's fantastic. And sometimes we have a say, you go to find the horses and you find kingdom. So I went for one journey, and how now I found something. I have to digest it. It's fantastic, really. I just want to ask, is it only the materials and all the resources are only for online guiding and videos and teaching, or is it also like there are YouTubes or story? I mean, is it also for live performances or only for the online performances and teaching?
I can on that one. What we have recorded are only online performances where they're broken down and you can access different parts of them. Also in the additional material is a recording of a full in-person recording by Pittsburgh Playback Theater, which is available on YouTube. We don't have any of the recordings of full in-person performances, mostly because there's not a lot out there, because people tend to just put up bits of it, and it's hard to get audience permission, as you are well aware of, Aviva. But you are welcome. This is open. You all can use this resource in any way that is useful for you. And I want to just give a little plug here. Aviva is one of my teachers, and a wonderful playback teacher and performer and conductor. And she is she's telling her story in one of these recordings, and I'm the conductor, and she argues with me and says, no, you can't do it in that form, you have to do it in a different form. Oh, look for that as you dig into them. Thank you, Aviva. Lenore, did you have a question?
I did, yeah. Hi, Heidi. Hi, everybody. I love this. I didn't expect it to be such a like intricate pathway of thing to thing to thing. And I guess my question is just, there was a point in watching the teller's story that I was like, oh, I would have made a really different choice there. And I was just thinking, like, in a workshop, I would have been able to say, oh, I want to learn from that. And then maybe we would have had a back and forth, right, about like, and I would have learned something from the tension between my perspective and the perspective of the person doing it. And I know, so we haven't been used to having a textbook to learn from. It's been really like knowledge that's passed from live teacher to live teacher. And so for those of you who are teaching playback now, using like an archive material that you can't have dialogue with, but that has other strengths, I'm just wondering, like, how do you see this working with troupe development? What would you recommend for sort of supplementing it? Yeah, because I'll just be frank, our troupe doesn't have the resources necessarily to do a lot of intensive workshops right now. So I was really hoping, oh gosh, we could link them to this and then bring people on. But yeah, any tips, suggestions, anything?
I can say that one of our hopes was that we would get a little bit more compare and contrast between the way different companies use the same form. But it turned out from the 3 performances, people have such broad repertoire that there were only like 2 forms that we got multiple instances of. And so that could be another goal for a second edition of this, and might speak a little more to the tension that you're describing, but also it's very different. It's not the same as being in a workshop. And I want to re-emphasize that, like, yeah, people should seek training and work with supervision in addition to drawing on archival resources like this. It's probably not a substitute for a workshop or a training session, but we hope a resource.
I would also suggest, I have shown bits of this in class, and then we've just in a class, a playback theater class or an improv class, and we have talked about it and discussed, the choice that was made. Might you do something different, like we would do in a workshop?
Okay, so I'm going to take away from that, hosting a troupe development viewing of something where we're able to kind of look through it and together do that. That would be great.
I think so.
I just want to add to that in terms of learning, is that it's also, it's not necessarily about whether one would or wouldn't have made that choice, but what you might think went into making that choice. and why in that moment, in the context of that performance, because that's the other thing, no form is void from the context of the entire performance or the way in which the conductor interacted with the teller. So it's like I mean, the beautiful thing about it is you can look at it from so many different ways in terms of learning and deconstructing and thinking about it. So, you know, it's, there's a depth that in viewing together and in asking questions, I think can really encourage deep exploration and learning.
I think it's important to mention also right now that Jordan and I put this together, but there are people in the room that have been doing playback and are much more experienced and wonderful practitioners than we are. And so we're so fortunate to have them in the room who can also speak to these questions and recognize. Thank you, Debbie, for that. Absolutely.
Something else, a sort of unique value that we discovered as we were working on this project and or just engaging in online playback theater generally, is the idea that these might in some strange way almost be more complete than a recording of an in-person performance ever could, because there's not 1 or 3 cameras, but 27 cameras, and that there exists nothing outside of the field of the camera's view in an online performance. And so all of that context that Debbie was mentioning, the conducting, it's there for you to see or not. But that might be a strange advantage that online playback theater has, at least in an archival form, over what we can piece together from multiple camera angles from an in-person performance. Andrea asks, are we planning a second edition? Something I'll have to say about that is, while we were creating this, I was in a 2-year post-MFA position at Virginia Tech, which has since concluded. And so while we can expect some support from Virginia Tech and Virginia Tech Publishing in the future, we would likely need to explore other kinds of funding and options, and it might be a little more complicated. That's all to say. Yeah, I'm currently working in an independent middle and high school in Seattle, Washington, teaching theater. And so I have some limited kind of bandwidth, but would be interested. Part of my hope is that the open access nature of it means that our team might grow bigger and or the resources bigger, so that we can continue in a professional way, but yeah, not be bound by whatever Heidi and my personal constraints might be.
Other questions?
What I just think this is such a valuable resource for our playback community, and I'm just wondering what other ideas you have for getting this to getting this to our people. And I mean, I love this launch, and it was very informative, and I think that is a nice thing to be able to, you know, be walked through. But I love more, you know, so that's my yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's one step to get it put together. And then the next step of getting it out there for people. Hopefully word of mouth. And we've posted it, the link on Facebook pages. And yeah, if you have some recommendations on that, love to hear about them. Both Jordan and I have our contact information in the resource. And yes, Andrea, would love to have you do it in Spanish for us or do a Spanish edition. That would be fantastic. Yeah, Andrea's from Mexico. Linda, I know you had mentioned that you were teaching, so maybe you need to do a German language edition of it. Aviva, calling for
Probably,
Israel, and Sarah from Belgium. We've got lots of potential here. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just kind of wondering, like, playback is really an oral tradition, coming from oral tradition. And slowly, slowly, we are coming into not only written about playback and teaching by books, but now it's also, how you say, you have oral tradition and then you have a visual tradition. Or what I'm saying, that there is a kind of a change, and how does it expand our teaching methods, or even the concepts about playback, that we can witness so much and enjoy so much because of this facilitation that you are offering. Just to say, like.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Very exciting.
Well, thank you all. Yeah, we continue to get different kinds of comments in the chat. If you haven't taken a peek at that, it's likely that people will have common interests. I hear a lot of gratitude for this project, and I'm honored. We could make just one more moment for questions and then probably wrap it up. Is there any kind of last questions or comments people want to share?
Sarah, thank you for sharing about your project, and that's also would like to hear more about that, and point you to if you're interested in, if you're a playbacker, there's so many good Facebook groups that are sharing information and point connection. So yes.
And thank you, Anna, for this recommendation to share with the Theater Library Association.
Can you send the chat? I mean, all the things that were written on the chat, can it be sent or saved? I don't know how to, because there is a lot of information and I would love to save it, but how do I do it?
Yeah, Aviv, I'm recording it, and I also am saving the chat. I think that what we'll do is, I mean, I can send that to you directly, and there's some other people that were not able to come that want that, but also we'll connect that to the resource itself. Okay. So other people, even though they couldn't attend today, could have access to that.
Well, perhaps we'll close there. Thank you all again so much for coming and for supporting this massive effort of Heidi and mine.
Well, thank you. Great job.
Great work. Amazing. Really.
Thank you.
So happy.
Yeah.
And thanks again to all who have supported us, and all the artists and the funders who have worked on this resource.
Absolutely. And thank you for giving your permission. Many of you attended these performances that were recorded or participated in them. And we couldn't put this together without those permissions in your stories. So ultimately, that's what made it work. Thank you so much for that.